Hello, all my DINKS friends. It is so good to see you. The DINKS are coming off a big weekend high. We were at SmileCon. We live podcasted from SmileCon. We met up with so many friends, so many people in the industry, and really developed a lot more content to bring to all of you. So welcome to Humpday Happy Hour with Dennis in the Know. This is your backstage pass for current trends, politics, and education in the dental world. It is live. And tonight we're doing a little rosé. It's over a cocktail, as always. And as always, I am with some of my best friends in the industry, although JB is having some camera issues tonight. So I'm just going to bring my friend Chad up and say, Chad, cheers.
Cheers, buddy.
How you doing, my brother?
I'm doing great, man. Didn't we have a great weekend?
It was a spectacular weekend. But before we get into what we're going to talk about, I've got to say that we are all practicing dentists. We are all business owners, and our job is to bring all of you in the know.
That's
now,
pretty...
Chad.
Now
let's banter.
Now, as they'd say on Duck Dynasty, now you're cooking with peanut oil. So
that's what I'm talking about right there.
Yeah, and I guarantee you, a boy from South Carolina knows peanut oil, man.
Yeah. How you doing, brother? We did have a great weekend.
We did. So, you know, a lot of this is going to be going out later and after the fact, but I got to tell you all how good of a sport my good friend, Dr. Jeff Horowitz is. This is really funny. So Horowitz, God love him, sometimes gets his days mixed up, and he flies in on Friday and doesn't know what he's going to do with himself. I've got my son there. I promised my son I'd take him to Disney World. And so and Jeff was like, hell yeah, I want to go to Epcot with you. So you know what? I picked up Jeff. We saddled up in the car. We went to Epcot, and we had the best time at Epcot. Just the two of us for several hours. Then my son showed up a few hours later because he was at Magic Kingdom, and we had a great time. It was a lot of fun.
What a fun weekend. First off, anytime, as Jeff always so eloquently says, anytime we get to spend time together as a threesome, number one, it re-energizes us as partners in this thing that we're doing, that we, continue to have fun providing this service to the dental community. And I think we always get really re-energized when we're together, and remember why we love each other so much and are continuing to do this thing. But then what a cool opportunity to podcast in a situation where so many dentists were in town doing lots of dentisting type of things with legislation, CE, vendor shopping, and all the things. And we got to see so many good friends. And I had a great weekend. It was a quick turn. I didn't get to enjoy the loveliness of Epcot, and I am a little jealous about that. Anyway, what I can tell you is there are some really fun, exciting things coming for the DINKS, and just stay tuned. It's going to be a fun, at least another 12 months. I think we've got enough funding. We can keep going for 12 months, boys.
It's going to be a wild ride.
I loved it though, because, we had, not only did we get to do that main stage podcast event, but we had our own booth, and, we had our new backdrop that JB had made, which was awesome. And it was just a good vibe. People were just coming by to say hello and dropping by. And we were doing kind of off the cuff interviews. And so we really did. We curated a lot of great content, I thought. We came up with some great ideas. And I don't know, just like you said, though, I really left there energized about what we're doing and how much fun it is working with you two.
The whole event was very well put together. I think our podcast that we did on the main stage actually put a lot of pointed questions towards the ADA, and let's see how they respond.
Yep.
And for those of you that, obviously nobody's seen it yet, but we will publish each of those on our Facebook channel, as well as as individual podcasts and YouTube. So I just think we brought a lot of great information out there that really needed to be brought to the forefront.
Yeah, it was great. Well, we've chatted for a while. We were slow getting started here. We have a terrific guest tonight. Dr. Jaren Argyle is with us tonight. He is the founder and coach of the Elevated Dentist. So we're real excited to talk to him. He's also a sleeping TMJ nerd like me. So I'm really excited to chat with him some. But before we do that, JB, you have some news?
Always.
Okay. Let's do this.
There's some interesting updates. So first off, we talked a lot last week about on September 29th, Smile Direct Club filed Chapter 11 bankruptcy. A lot of murmurs going on about, will this be the end of Smile Direct Club? And there were some pros and cons being expressed on different open platforms. Well, we're getting a little bit more clarity this week on what this really means. Of course, we talked last week about this being a restructuring of debt and that the founders have injected another $20 million in capital investment to try to find a new buyer for the group. That's right. So NASDAQ has actually delisted the stock and removed it from the exchange. So currently stocks are not being able to be bought or sold. This is part of some of the SEC filings that they put together in conjunction with their bankruptcy filing last week. It looks like Smile Direct Club is on the market for a new owner, and the investors have put money in to carry it through until it can find a new owner or a new investor. If by November 23rd, they have not found a new investor or able to close on an acquisition deal, then they will probably be moving forward with a liquidation event. So I think we'll all be watching this pretty closely. This would be the first major DIY application that was available to the general marketplace for at-home dental procedures. And I do think it will be really interesting to then see what the ripple effect will be for some of these other companies, as we discussed this weekend with the Snap-on Smiles, the at-home denture processors that are now starting to pop up, and the other DIY orthodontic companies that are doing it, quote unquote, with some minimal supervision. So this, is definitely something both to be watching from an investor and from someone who kind of follows the stock market a bit. It could be an indication of economic changes in the landscape that's happening there. But as a dentist, it's definitely interesting to see what the DIY marketplace may be reflecting and what the demand and acceptance and tolerance for those services will be. So we'll continue to watch that. It sounds like November 23rd is going to be the big date for Smile Direct Club to get it together. Here's another totally weird story. Post Malone was visiting in Rome, Italy, when he bit into a McDonald's chicken nugget and, yes, popped off. As we all know, he has a very flashy grill, popped off a $600,000 diamond that he has bonded onto one of his canines. Well, as if that wasn't a bummer enough, it then somehow made its way into the plumbing system of this, in the sink of the bathroom or wherever he happened to be at the time. I think it may have popped off. He had it in his hand. He went to the bathroom to maybe try to reaffix it, or somehow it ended up in the sink. His comment was, now I'm going to have to go into the ancient sewers of Rome to find my diamond. Now, while he's worth $45 million, he was pretty dead set on getting his $600,000 diamond back out of the sewer system. While in the bathroom, he rigged up some kind of retrieval device with a couple different, he kind of MacGyvered the thing back out of the sewer. The article was quick to note, with thorough cleaning, he then went to an Italian dentist who rebonded the $600,000 diamond back into his canine. So fear not, the diamond has been returned to its rightful place on the facial surface of either number 6 or number 11. So we're glad to hear that Post Malone did not cry over the loss of his diamond from a chicken nugget from McDonald's. Lastly, the ADA obviously had their SmileCon last weekend, as we were discussing and were present for. SmileCon is a popular meeting, not just for the CE activity that's happening there, but also that is when the governing body of the ADA gets together and discusses potential changes in bylaws and policies, and they elect their officers. So certainly a new slate of officers has been elected. But here's one thing that's very interesting that to date, in all of my time in organized dentistry, I have not seen before. The ADA approved a decrease in their dues membership of 5%. The total value dollar value of that decrease was $30, which dropped their dues membership down to $570. Interestingly enough, in the article, they noted that part of this was a response to the tripartite discussion and what that has meant for dues escalation over the last 5 to 10 years. So the ADA, in recognition of both economic challenges for dentists, and they're seeing the data better than anybody, has made the first step in decreasing dues. And I have to applaud them for that. And I think other organized groups may have to look at the same, especially if they're continuing to struggle to get membership, as all dentists are continuing to look at those membership applications that come across their desk at the end of every year to determine where the best investment is of their money. And there's only so much in the pot. And so it's interesting to see the ADA's response. And with that, that's the news.
So anyhow, I'd like to introduce our guest. Our guest tonight is Dr. Jaren Argyle. He's the founder of the Elevated Dentist. He's a practicing general dentist in northern Utah. He's about 30 minutes north of Salt Lake City, with a specific emphasis on treatment of sleep-related breathing disorders and TMD. He graduated from Connecticut in 2005 and immediately purchased an existing practice. He continues to practice today. But what's the coolest thing about him is that he received his life coach certification. I mean, not that the other stuff isn't cool, but he's a life coach. And I think that that's a pretty fantastic, side gig from dentistry. And he got that in May of 2022. So he's a little bit less than a year into it. But he practices, or a little bit over a year into it. He practices what he preaches, spends many of his days enjoying time with his wife. He's been married for 25 years. He also spent his 25th anniversary in Italy, and his children. And then he's involved in all kinds of cool water sports like wake surfing and foiling. He also mountain bikes, he skis, snowboards. He's just an outdoorsy Utah type of guy, but he really wants to help dentists live their best lives. So Jaren, thank you for being here.
I appreciate you having me on the show. I love being able to get in front of dentists and being able to help them to, like you said, live their best life.
Well,
Can I ask, did you say wakeboarding and what?
Foiling.
Foiling.
Can someone, for the non-watercraft people,
talk about it? Let's go.
I would like to know what foiling is.
So a foil is basically a surfboard that's got a mast that goes down below it, and it has two wings on a cross piece that sits on the bottom of that mast. So rather than going on the surface of the water, you're actually elevated up out of the water. So if you've ever heard of an air chair before,
I've always wondered what that was called. Right on.
So an air chair is the same technology, it works just like the airplanes do. It all has to do with lift, has to do with the amount of the flow of the water over the top of the wing versus underneath it. And so if you've never seen it before, it's a very entertaining thing to watch someone try and learn how to do the very first time.
Yeah.
I was just thinking, like, how do you, I kind of get the natural progression of different water sports, but that seems, because it is so fundamentally different from being on top of the water, which most of the things that we're familiar with are, how does one become brave enough and feel confident enough to transition to foiling?
Well, it's interesting because when we first purchased one, they tell you should be wearing a helmet. They tell you all sorts of different things. And I wasn't going to wear a helmet. I'm like, I'm not going to wear a helmet. I know how to wake surf. This can't be that much difficult. They also tell you to start a lot further back behind the boat. Rather than having your wave built up like when you surf, you drop all the water out of your boat. You put a longer rope, like a water ski rope, out there. And you're basically trying to start out and learn how to do it in flat water. The problem is not very many people pay attention to the instructions or to the suggestions that are given by other people. So I've got a next door neighbor who just told me the other day that he tried and went out wake foiling for the first time. First of all, he's crazy because we're in October and the water's getting cold and the temperatures are definitely cold out here. But he didn't drop the water out of his boat and was trying to do it on the wave, and it's just way too many things to keep track of. And he came out with, I mean, he had a gash on his leg, he had a bruise on his upper body, because I mean, these are carbon fiber hard pieces of material that hit you pretty good if you're not doing what you should. But to date, I've yet to get hit by the wing on the foil at all. So it can be done. Just got to be smart about it.
Well, Jaren, if it makes you feel any better, I was told to wear a helmet when I started speed walking. So, yeah.
Jaren, how many kids do you have?
I've got two. I've got, and my wife and I, we got started pretty early. I got married when I was 21 years old, and about 6 months into marriage, we found out that she was pregnant with our son. So I've got a 23-year-old, almost 24-year-old son, and then a 20-year-old daughter.
Okay. And so tell us a little bit about your upbringing and dental school, and then, college, then dental school. Just tell us a little bit about yourself before we get into what you're doing now.
Okay. So I grew up in northern Utah, a little bit further north than where I'm at right now, about a half hour further north, about 15, 20 minutes from the Idaho border. Really growing up, had a great childhood, had 5 siblings. I was the third of 6 total. And just going up through high school, I took a human anatomy and physiology class that was just a semester long, but gave me a great amount of an appreciation for me just loving to learn about the body. It just intrigued me. And so that's kind of where I got set off on the dental path. I actually was more on the medical path. Went off to college. I went and did a 2-year service mission for my church. Went up into the Seattle, Washington area, worked with the Southeast Asian population up there. So I learned how to speak Cambodian, Vietnamese, Thai, a little bit of Laotian. Been a long time since I've been speaking a lot of those, and there's not a lot of Southeast Asians where I live, so I've forgotten a lot of them. But went off to undergrad at Utah State University. It's a local university here in Utah, up in the northern part of Utah, Cache Valley, pretty beautiful area. And then
the Aggies, right?
Yep, the Aggies. That's
okay,
right.
Yeah. Right.
So it was probably the semester before I was going to go and take the MCAT. Our son was born. And I grew up, my dad was a nurse anesthetist, and he was at a local hospital. He was the only anesthesia person at all. They didn't have any anesthesiologists. And so he's the only one. He was on call 24/7. And after I had my son, I was just kind of like, I don't know that medicine's for me.
Yeah.
And I hadn't even thought of dentistry. And I had a good buddy who was going to dental school that next year. He'd already applied and been accepted. He said, hey, have you even thought about dentistry? And I got thinking, I'm like, okay, in my neighborhood, I've got 2 dentists that live there. I know both of their families really well. They're both seem to be happy and doing well in life. And so I thought I ought to look into that, went and to the couple of their offices. And after that, just realized, this is a great profession. It allows you to control your schedule. So many good things that can come from it. And you're doing all of the similar things that have to do with the body and the sciences, the human sciences. So rather than taking the MCAT that spring, I took the DAT and applied for dental schools that next fall and got into a couple different ones. But University of Connecticut really was it was kind of funny. The way I chose it was going to be the best living circumstances for my family. They touted being the #1 school in the nation, but I think every school does that.
Yeah.
And when you're applying, it's like, oh, okay. And at the time, I didn't know whether I wanted to specialize or whether I wanted to be a general dentist. And so I wanted to have my options open as far as doing something after. But ended up being a phenomenal school. Loved it out there. Really enjoyed Connecticut itself, just the area, beautiful area. And if it wasn't so far away from all of my family and all of my wife's family, I could have seen us staying out in that area. And I don't like the cold humidity. I don't like humid cold. I can handle dry cold. I don't like humid cold.
Oh, come on.
And humid heat. They had about 1 week a year in the summer that it would get up into the 90s and be extra hot. Not that you South Carolina, North Carolinians have any sympathy for me, but it was tough to handle. I didn't like walking out of the house feeling like I needed to go shower again.
Yeah.
Yeah. Try Winnipeg.
Yeah, and they don't have a lot of them don't. I was in Maine for a summer for dental school, and they didn't have AC in a lot of those buildings, but it would still get those like hot, humid days. I want you to keep talking about your journey and then ultimately how it evolved to what you're doing now. But I wanted to mention, because I've only met one other person who went to dental school in Connecticut. And the one thing that was impressed upon me from talking to that individual, and we really don't talk about this much on the show, he had mentioned at that time, so I was doing my rotation in Maine, and he was one of the attending docs there. Young guy, though. He'd only been in the clinic for a couple of years, not too far from his graduation from Connecticut. And he could do all these expanded function services. He could do crown lengthening and endo and surgeries, and he had this whole comfort level with a lot of things that, leaving a school that had so many different specialties, I really had not had a ton of exposure in doing my own surgeries and crown lengthenings and implant placements, et cetera. And it really impressed upon me how important it would be in the future to look for schools that offer diverse educations, and actually those schools that don't have a ton of specialty programs housed within create a very phenomenal opportunity for general dentists to become that super dentist, to come through the school and learn how to do so many different procedures to be able to go back to their communities and serve that. Was that part of your experience when you were coming through that program as well? Was that just unique to that particular individual?
I would say that it was probably fairly unique to that particular individual.
Okay.
Connecticut's very heavy on the medical side of things. In fact, your first 2 years, you are with the medical students pretty much every single day through all of your basic medical sciences and your pathology. They do it different because they don't have individual classes. They have like a 4-hour lecture in the morning, and they have professors come in and teach. And the entire first year, it's all about the way the body's supposed to work. The entire next year, it's all about the pathology of it. And like our first year, the first 2 years, you're very, very light in the world of dentistry there, but then they catch up. I had the opportunity when they caught wind that I was going to go straight into general practice rather than doing a AGD or GPR. The director of, not the director, but the dean of, I think student services, I can't remember exactly. He was an oral surgeon. I worked with him to be able to go in my entire 4th year of dental school, 2 days, 2 afternoons a week I would get to spend in the AAGD clinic that they had there. So rather than seeing one patient in the afternoon, I got to see 3 or 4 patients in those afternoons. And I was able to just work with the residents there and have them check off my work rather than having a preceptor in the clinics that you had to sit and wait for. So that was beneficial, allowed me to graduate with way more credits and everything that I needed to, but also gave me a lot more exposure than I would have had. So, I mean, I had a lot of opportunity there, but that was mainly just some bread and butter general dentistry stuff, not a lot of the more advanced procedures in general dentistry.
Jaren, I've got something you said a little bit earlier struck me, which was you made a lifestyle decision very early. You were way into the medical side of things and the anatomy and physiology, but realized that there would be a lifestyle sacrifice if you decided to go into the medical field and therefore pursued dentistry. So was that kind of a foreshadowing for your getting your life coaching diploma or certification? Is that something you've always thought of throughout your career, is how do I balance lifestyle with career and still keep it fulfilling?
So I'd say yes and no to your question. Yes, that it's always been on the forefront of my mind as far as family first. I mean, there's been no question in my mind. My upbringing, everything that I have touts the importance of my family. And so even to this day in my practice, I practice 26 hours a week. That's what I've practiced the entire time. My first 2 years out of dental school, I worked every other Friday as an associate at another practice. But other than that, I've never worked more than 26 hours a week. Still have not grown my practice a whole lot bigger because I don't want to have the headaches. I don't want to have to be too devoted to that. I want to be able to have the time with my family, be able to spend time with my kids. It's a completely different dynamic now that they're older. But as far as no to that question, really life coaching, I had no clue. I didn't know anything about. And it wasn't up until probably about, I mean, I had some pretty big things happen about 10 or 11 years ago that really required me to kind of dig deep and dig inside and figure out. I mean, I guess the easiest way to put it without getting too specific is I relied a lot on praise from others in order to have self-value. And there were some things that happened in life that basically shot that down. And so I've been able to change and learn. And so it's really been probably about a 10 to 11 year process that's been kind of, I guess, gleaming me for this life coaching stuff. And it wasn't until probably about 2, 3 years ago that I was sitting in a mastermind group with a bunch of dentists. And this particular mastermind group, it was for sleep and TMD practices, for people who were trying to really figure out the business side of sleep and TMD, because there's so many dentists out there that do sleep and TMD, and they either do it kind of what I would say in a corrupt manner because it's driven by a lot of the vendors and different things out there. And then you've got ones that are doing it in a good way, but they're not profitable at all. And there's a huge dichotomy in the sleep and TMD world when it comes to that stuff, and more so in the sleep world. But as I was sitting there,
that's a discussion we're gonna have that.
You
That's
just
a
described
huge
Jeff's
discussion
practice.
sidebar.
It's like, am I listening to Jaren or am I listening to Jeff? I'm trying to figure that out right now. Sorry.
It is. It's crazy, and it's
Sorry, not
unfortunate
sorry.
because dentists that are trying to get into sleep and TMD, it's a very difficult thing to be able to know the right way to get it done. But as I was sitting there, and this was a group of probably about 30 dentists. I mean, these are 30 dentists that are paying $25,000 to be part of this mastermind group. We meet together on about a quarterly basis, and we really dive deep into each other's practice and really try and figure out what it is that we can benefit. And as I sat and listened to them, I realized how many dentists are financially successful. Well, I take it back, because there were some of them that were very unfinancially successful. And then there were a lot that were very successful financially, but they were miserable. They weren't happy. And it just hit me. I remember we did this, it's called a Wheel of Life exercise, and I'll actually provide a link for it that you guys, we developed one for the elevated dentist that's specific to dentists rather than being a generic one. And all you do is go on and answer about probably 40 questions. It'll probably take 5 minutes of your time, and then it'll give you a nice will, and you can kind of see how balanced or how unbalanced that will is. And I remember we did a little exercise with that, and so many of these dentists' wheels were just all scawampus. I mean, there was no balance to them at all. And I looked at my wheel, and there was quite a bit of balance to it. And I thought, you know what, this is something that it comes natural to me. It's I like to, some of the mentors that I've got, Dan Sullivan calls it your unique ability. I think each of us are given gifts naturally, and then there's other ones that we can work on, but naturally we have abilities, and I think that it's our responsibility to share those abilities with the world. And I just found an area where dentists can truly benefit. And I think that as dentists, and I don't know if it's our personality that goes into it, going into it. I don't know if it's that type A personality, the very specific, and or if once we get into dental school, it's the environment that we're put in, and just how specifically we're critiqued. And I mean, we've got a margin that's like 0.5 of a millimeter off, or you've got just this little overhang. And we become so myopic, I think, as dentists. We become very, very good at specific things. We become extremely good at clinical dentistry. We become extremely good at having a profitable practice. But what happens with that is a lot of the other things in our life go to the wayside. And I think a lot of times dentists, as a whole, I think dentists always want to do good. I think that's part of the reason we came into the profession. We wanted to help people. We wanted to bless their lives. And as we come out of dental school, I don't know about your guys' dental school, but I learned nothing as to running a dental practice. I learned no managerial skills. I learned zero leadership skills. But when you come out of dental school, that's not what you're worried about. You're worried about, okay, how can I get faster at doing a root canal? How can I learn how to do implants because I didn't really get taught how to do it? How can I learn how to do ortho because they barely touched on it in dental school? And the clinical side of things is so urgent that we focus all of our attention on that. And in the meantime, if we have our own practice or whatever it is, the practice is growing. Dentistry, it works. The business model, it's been shown over and over. I think the majority of us as dentists are idiots when it comes to running a practice. And we are successful. We're successful despite having zero business sense. I mean, it's so funny to see a well-run business and then see a dental practice. And I think we're getting better at that. But we focus so much on the clinical side of things that our practice just grows, and it grows and grows to whatever it can become. And we really have no control over that because we're paying so much attention to taking care of patients. And then we get to a point where either we've got to start putting in more hours or we've got to get an associate in to help put in hours. And some of us don't want to deal with the headache of an associate, a lot of different complications that come in from that. And I mean, Stephen R. Covey said it best when in his book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, when he talks about climbing the ladder. And we're working hard climbing this ladder. Well, we get to the top of that ladder and we realize the ladder's on the wrong wall. And I think so much we as dentists don't really step back and say, what is it that I want? What do I truly want in my life? Not just in my dental practice, but in my personal life as well. And we just keep going until we get exhausted. I mean, if you look at the numbers of anxiety, the numbers associated with anxiety, with depression, we all know the suicide rates. It's sad.
Mhm.
For what an amazing profession that dentistry is. I mean, if you look at the U.S. News World and Report, I think last year we fell out of the top 10. It was like the first year we fell out of the top 10 in I don't know how many years, and we're back in it this year.
Mhm.
It's a profession that there is plenty of opportunity for success, but I think a lot of times we have a hard time maintaining the right mindset to be able to have that be successful because we work in a difficult environment. I mean, we've got to have a smile on our face all the time, unless you do a lot of sedation dentistry. I mean, if you do a lot of sedation dentistry, I guess you can chuck instruments and get mad at people and tell patients they need to do a lot better job. And I think there's something to being right in front of their face. I mean, we are in an extremely intimate environment. And I mean, you got to admit, when you're prepping, I was just prepping tooth number 18 this morning on a patient, prepping it for a single crown. This guy's buccal mucosa and cheek was like hugging the tooth.
Mm-hmm.
And I am like retracting with all of my might, along with my assistant, holding the tongue out of the way. And we're trying to prep this thing. And if I let a little tension off of that, I'm going to take out his whole cheek because it got this burst spinning at 300,000 RPM. It's an intense environment. There's no question about it. And part of the problem is I think that we are so worried about being productive and so worried about making a lot of money that sometimes we forget how much money do we really want and what is it that we want as far as a lifestyle, what is it that we want for our families. And so we get lost in the thick of all of that, I believe.
Well, the sad part is that, when we're in dental school, you mentioned something earlier that's just really stuck with me when you were talking about what we learn about the business of dentistry, and it's very minimal. I mean, we did have a business class our third and fourth year, but I'll never forget that they hired a guest lecturer to come in, and it was from a practice management group, and we thought they were the coolest people ever. And then as soon as we graduate, they're hounding us to sign up with them.
Mhm.
But I encourage you to look through all of the reviews out there on dentists. There are very few 5-star reviews that say this was the best run business I've ever been into in my life. And so we've got to balance this. The business is for us, the experience is for the patient. And so we've got to figure out the comfortable balance between those. And what I'm gathering from what you're telling me about the elevated dentist is that you're helping dentists find that and find their happiness. And if I'm wrong, correct me, but when did you start the elevated dentist? I mean, was that when, how long ago was that?
So the concept of it came up about a year and a half ago, right after I finished my life coach certification. I mean, I had the desire to start it up 2 years ago. But one of the other things that I'm not looking forward to is I've got to practice what I preach. So I'm not going to just dive in and put hours upon hours upon hours on this, even though I know that there's a need for it. I've still got to maintain the balance in my own personal life. And so it's been in the works for about a year and a half, and we're putting everything together. We actually are just onboarding clients right now. It's a group coaching format. I do one-on-one coaching, but in the mastermind groups that I've been part of, I've found that the true value is in the knowledge of the group, and I'm more of a facilitator. I'm more of someone who's going to help ask the right questions. I'm more of someone who's going to help keep things on track. But when you get, say, the 4 of us together and we were going to talk about difficulties in our practices, or when COVID came, what were some of the things that we did, or staff shortages, any practice related stuff, and even with personal life experiences. Chad, you've had completely different life experiences than I have. Jeff, you've had different. JB, you've had different. We've all had different experiences, and there's value in all of those experiences. For me to sit at the top and say, I'm the greatest person to be able to speak to all dentists regarding all things is wrong. But I've been trained and I understand how to facilitate that and how to coach clients in life matters. And so our major push is with our group coaching program. Even though like I said, I initially am offering a one-on-one coaching, but I'll phase it out after a year or two where I'm wanting the group coaching to go on in perpetuity. I want it to continue to move on and ideally have clients come in for a year or two, learn the skills that they need to learn, get in a place where they need to be, and be able to move on. Stay on longer if they need to, but we put it at a price point that it's something that should be affordable for most dentists. We're actually working with dental schools, and with ASDA, with the different groups, because we really want to get in with the students. And for the students, it's a $200 cost for the entire year. And so we're trying to keep it super low cost for them, give them opportunities when they get into graduate and move forward to be able to have discounted options. It's funny when JB was mentioning the ADA discount of $30. I was sitting there trying to figure out where I was going to spend my $30.
I know, right?
This next year. No, but it's awesome that they have that looking at that and understanding that some dentists have been having a difficult time. And I mean, $30 to us is not massive, but I mean, you take all of the members of the ADA and multiply it by 30, and that's a big chunk of money that they're letting go. So I think it's a very
well, with the
good
current
thing.
inflation rate, you're not going to see the reduction. You're just going to see that your dues maintain.
It didn't actually change.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
That's
I
probably true.
I want to give you a little bit of credit, actually a lot of credit here, because I don't know if you guys have seen this, but I'm going to say something. And I think the only people that may get upset with what I'm going to say are the people that maybe this rings true with. But there's a lot of self-proclaimed experts in our profession and other professions that don't even have the qualifications to be doing what they're doing, but they're supposedly an expert in it. I commend you for actually going out and getting the life coach certification. And, you know, I honestly, I would have commended you either way if you started the elevated dentist a while ago and then you went and got the life coach thing. But I love what you're doing, and I love how you kind of went about it the right way. I mean, I think that there's a lot to be said about that. And I think it brings up a whole new topic of really just pivoting within our professional practice and maybe extending ourselves a little bit and being able to kind of merge two great professions. So I think that's really cool that you went and did that.
Oh, I appreciate that. Thank you. And if you know me at all, I'm the guy who went and took 20 implant courses before I started placing implants.
Yeah.
I'm the guy who I don't do something in my office unless I feel like I can do it as well as the specialist. So, and sometimes I just don't like doing it. So I don't do endo.
Yeah.
Endo.
Yeah.
Everybody says that about
Hey,
endo.
you know what? This is your safe endo place because none of us do endo. Like today,
That's
I had
good.
one on tooth number 29, and I'm like, I'm seriously just referring this to Walsh. I'm just like, I'm sorry, lady, but you're gonna have to go.
I just don't want to.
I just don't want to do this endo. No, I don't.
I had one on number 9 the other day, and I just sat there and I'm like, this would be the easiest root canal in the world. I'm like, I'm glad that I've pretty much gotten rid of all of my root canal stuff.
Yeah.
Sorry,
So
you're
it's
out,
not,
lady.
it's not even
Otherwise,
an
I'm throwing
option.
it with toilet
I don't
paper.
even have files. Like you're
Wait,
not
yeah.
getting.
You know,
any
you already
removal.
jinxed yourself though. Once you make a statement like that, even if it's just in your mind, you're done. Like something is gonna go awry.
Yeah.
Yep.
Jaren, I want to know, like, as you're looking at individuals now that are pursuing your elevated program and stuff, what are you seeing differently? Struggles, challenges, discussions that you're having with newer dentists that are entering the market versus those who might be as old as Chad and Jeff?
Jaren and I are the same age. I did the math earlier. Okay. Now,
Okay,
look,
mostly as old
he
as
lives
Chad.
a much cleaner life than I do, and he foils. Okay.
Right. No, I know.
Yeah.
He's way cooler at his age than you are at yours. But anyway, my point is like newer dentists entering the profession, the workforce, and then those of us who are established, who might have different challenges that we're dealing with.
So the thing that I see with the younger dentists is it's that fight between making money and making payments. Dentists are coming out with so much debt now. Like I look at it, and I mean, I came out from that was the other reason I chose the University of Connecticut. After 1 year, I could get in-state residency. They had 0 dental schools in Utah at the time, and it was going to be inexpensive for me. And so I look at even several years later, I've got a little brother who graduated from Dalhousie up in Nova Scotia, and his student debt was probably 3 times, maybe 4 times more than what my student debt was. And so it's hard because the DSO positions are typically able to provide them with a more sustainable income, but they don't necessarily know if they want to go there. Or if they do, a lot of them typically after a couple of years aren't necessarily happy with it because it wasn't what they kind of wanted when they went into dental school. There's definitely a subset of dentists that the DSO works really well with. The best description I can give is if you've ever read the book, The E-Myth or The E-Myth Revisited by Michael Gerber, it talks about 3 hats that we all wear: the technician, the manager, and the entrepreneur hat. If you've got a technician hat and you don't have any desire to do any managing or entrepreneur, DSO's employment dentistry is phenomenal. But that's kind of what I see with the younger. With the older dentists, and we'll say the mid-career dentists like me and Chad and Jeff.
And me.
Well,
I'm
and
just
you,
kidding.
you
It,
seem
he
like you're
is.
on the younger end of it, but you're still mid-career,
28.
I'd say.
yeah, I'm definitely mid-career.
I really feel like it is that they typically are in a practice that they either have to work too much in, or they're in a practice that is not the type of practice that they want. Meaning they haven't really controlled the destiny of where that practice is growing. They've just kind of let it organically grow rather than conscientiously making decisions to have it grow in the direction they want it to grow and to limit that growth. Like the amount of patients that I see today really is no more than it was 5 years ago. Am I more productive? Am I more profitable? You bet it is. Am I spending more time in the chair? No. In fact, those 26 hours include any of the business management that I need to do, anything that I do from that standpoint. So I'm not having to come in after hours and do any of that. I guess I do need to add an hour to that because I do an hour of telemedicine visits
Mhm.
for our
Liar.
sleep and TMD
27
patients.
hours.
27. Jump that on there. But I think that most dentists they haven't controlled their destiny.
Yeah.
And I think that's where your mid-career dentists are at. And same thing with your older dentists that are getting close to retirement. The older ones, I've kind of been dumb and not been smart in investing money. And so I don't have near enough money to retire. Kind of catching up with them.
But Jaren, I think, something that you mentioned was about these dentists who maybe are just strictly technicians, but I don't really believe that there are that many people that go to dental school just because they want to be a tooth technician. That's just not the excitement or what drives most people. I would say, again, this is a completely uninformed opinion. I know that for me and every dentist that I've ever known, that they've said, I went to dental school because I thought teeth and the oral systemic connection were cool, and all of these great things. I could be a doctor, but not have to, pull all these crazy hours and have to do call, and I could have a nice lifestyle. But nobody says, I just wanted to work on teeth. I've never heard that come from a dentist. And I get it. There are some people who really do enjoy working with their hands, but I think even some of those people have some entrepreneurial spirit or some managerial spirit inside them that makes them want to have a little bit more ownership than just being a technician. I don't think that's why many of us went to school. Would you agree with that?
Yes, I'd agree. I wouldn't say nobody. I'm very against using
Yeah,
absolutes.
I agree.
But I would say the majority, and I think that's one of the draws to dentistry, to be honest with you. I mean, when you go to your interviews, I like working with my hands, I like helping people, but really deep down, I want to make good money and not have to work too much. I
And I
think
think
that's
you
really
become
where
a
that
tooth
comes from.
technician. You get comfortable in this rut, Jeff, and that's where I see it. I agree with what both of you all said, but I think that you get comfortable in this rut and you realize that sometimes the tooth technician is what's turning the dollar, and you become that.
Yep.
But I also think that's where unhappiness comes from.
100%.
I think that's the root of dissatisfaction, is when you start catering to this. I've got to provide, I've got to make this level of money in order to be happy. And I think I found a whole other place uh, of discussion for us, Jaren. But we are actually out of time already. This hour has gone by so quickly, and I want to learn more. I mean, I'd actually love to have a sidebar conversation with you just on some of what you talked about the sleep and TMJ practice. I love what you said about group coaching. Love everything that you've talked about, and really appreciate and applaud your efforts in dentistry to not just serve yourself, but to really help serve other dentists. And that's just so meaningful. And we appreciate that very much. We appreciate you taking the time. I wish we had more time to chat with you, but we're gonna talk a lot more. But in the meanwhile, thank you so much from all three of us. And Chad, would you mind closing us out?
Yeah, first off, I just want to say thanks to Jaren for being here. Jaren, we have a really good friend, Dr. Laura Brenner Studholm.
Mhm.
Are you familiar with her?
I actually was on the phone with her. Her and I had a Zoom call last week. After I saw her
Yeah.
on your guys' show, I sat down and talked with her just because I know that some of the individuals that we'll be working with will likely want to either get out of dentistry or have something else. And I
Yeah.
wanted to touch base with her and kind of see what her program was and where her niche was and what she enjoyed doing. So it was a really good conversation that I was able to have with her.
Yeah, she's fantastic, and I know I would love to make sure that you all continue to connect. Rich dentist, poor dentist. I think we can all benefit from being an elevated dentist. So, thank you for putting together, what you do. I know that you were going to put together a little link for our members, and I appreciate that. That'll be in the comments below. And if you have something to send me tomorrow, please do so. But one of the things that we talked about yesterday on our show, Jennifer had asked for advice from a mentor. And, that came up a lot this past week for me. And something that you said tonight made me just think of one of my favorite pieces of advice. And I shared it yesterday and I'll share it again. But Dr. Stephen Cutbirth, I took a series from him years ago, and it was a symposium that we did for, several years, and continuum. And he said that money can't buy you happiness, but it can make you miserable in some awfully nice places. And if you really dissect that statement, it's just so true. And so it's not all about money, but it is about personal happiness, and it's what you want in life. So please give Jaren a look and see what he has to offer and his team has to offer. And with that being said, thanks for being here. And whether you're listening now or in the future, we appreciate every one of you. So thank you very much.
And I appreciate you guys letting me be on the show. It's been an honor, and the three of you are phenomenal. Love listening to the banter that you guys have between you, and I think it's nice to see dentists that have got some lightheartedness about them.
Well, thanks so much, Jaren. We're full of it, but you know what?
Yeah.
It's good.
That's our elevation.
It's good to be full of it sometimes.
Yeah, thank you so much.
It's an
Thank
adaptive
you, Jaren. We
mechanism for
appreciate
Chad's
you.
crappy dentistry.
That's right. That's right. That's right. Good night, everybody.
Have a great
All right,
night.
good night, everyone.
Take care.
And that wraps up another podcast for Dentists in the Know. On behalf of Dr. Jennifer Bell, Dr. Chad Duplantis, and myself, remember that we've got a great profession, so let's make it a great day, Dinks.